What's one unsolved mystery you'd like to see solved before you die? Are we alone in the universe? I can't believe more people didn't want to know this. This would be one of my top questions. But the question I want the answer to the most is how the universe came to be and why there is something rather than nothing. Edit, I stand corrected, lots of people want to know this. The original comment was pretty far down when I saw it and I was shocked that I hadn't seen more comments asking questions like that. I was expecting for everyone to ask existential type questions when I first saw this post. Also, I forgot to mention that I really want an answer to the mind-body problem. Same, like existence itself does not make sense at all. Like, why does the universe exist in the first place? So interesting. This is the question that I want its answer the most, too. The Big Bang makes perfect sense until you start wondering, okay. But where did the stuff that caused the Big Bang come from? And where did the stuff that made the Big Bang possible? The question goes on forever. Nothing explains how the most simple foundations of existence just came to be and eventually pooped us out. I think there's the possibility that the singularity that caused the Big Bang is from the collapse of another universe. Which, when you begin to think that through, is pretty mind-boggling. How many times has the universe been through that cycle? What level of civilization was reached in the previous universe before collapse? But what made that first universe? MH370. I'm sure they'll eventually find the wreckage and have a better idea exactly what happened, but even today they're still finding old World War II ships and even ships older than that. So I hope that it's found before I leave, because I do wonder what happened to that plane. I just hope it's a matter of years or decades, and not centuries. Let me introduce you to Admiral Cloudberg, Radmiral Cloudberg, Admiral Cloudberg.medium.com. Call of the Void, 7 years on. What do we know about the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines 77 FA 5244 BF 99? Edit. Fixed links. My apologies. 7 years already? I remember being on the couch with the flu, checking for updates between fever dreams like it was yesterday. You're still on the couch. The fever is worse than we thought. I could only hope it's 2011 and I'm just having a fever dream. I just want to know who DB Cooper is. I know it's lame, but I'm curious. I'd like to know what happened to Andrew Gosden. A 14-year-old boy left home in Yorkshire one morning in 2007 dressed in his school uniform, and then withdrew all his money from his bank account. He went back home after his parents had gone to work and changed out of his uniform, then went to the train station and bought a one-way ticket to London, about 2 hours away by train. There is CCTV footage of him leaving King's Cross Station, but that's the last time he was seen. He didn't tell his parents he was planning to go to London, and it's never been established why he went there. I'd love to find out he's actually okay, or even if not, for his parents to finally find out what happened to him. It broke my heart reading his parents refused to change the locks of their house in case he comes back home. I remember watching a true crime show where parents kept their porch light on for years for their missing daughter, so she's not scared when she comes back. Years later they found out she was murdered. The end scene was them finally turning off the light. I sobbed like a baby. I saw a case of a kid who was kidnapped for ransom money on Mexico. His dad was a wealthy businessman and he had been cooperating with his son's captors to get him back. I think he paid what they were asking for, so the kidnappers told him his son was going to be home at any time. His dad stayed home by the door every day waiting for his son to return, and stayed up all night because, in case his son came back in the middle of the night, he didn't want him to see his dad sleeping like as if his life meant nothing. That was quite sad to hear. Worst thing is that even though he paid the amount his kidnappers wanted, they had actually killed him and threw his body away on the second day of his kidnapping or something. Scumbag kidnappers, do you have any idea who this was? The disappearance of William Tyrell. Basically, a 3-year-old kid was kidnapped in his front yard after the foster grandma went inside for a glass of water and she heard screaming from the sister, and when she ran out he was gone. This happens around 2014 and I still remember his face on the news in his Spider-Man costume. This one still gets me. I often think of William Tyrell and what his family, foster and biological, must go through every waking moment. Especially now I'm a mother of a toddler. I live with my sister, brother-in-law, and my nibblings. When he was about 3, my nephew went missing for like 15 minutes, and my sister woke me up screaming that they couldn't find him. Still the worst way I've ever woken up, and he was only missing for a short time. He was hiding in the house because he had gotten a popsicle when he shouldn't, and didn't want to get in trouble. My kid did the same thing and I nearly had a stroke. I ran around the house screaming his name. I went outside and called for him. Our yard is wooded, so it's very possible that he could have gone into the woods even though he knows he's not allowed to go without a parent. I opened closets, checked bathtubs, the whole 9 yards. I was on the verge of calling 911 when he popped out from under a blanket and with the biggest grin on his face told me that I couldn't find him. We had a very serious conversation about how if the other person doesn't know you're hiding, then they are going to assume you're missing. Which is way worse, and to please tell me going forward when he's going to hide so I don't worry. My sister did this to my parents when I was a kid. I was around 11, so she would have been 3 or 4. My mom burst into my room at way too early o'clock and just yelled, "We can't find your sister." Being tired, but on high alert, I rolled straight out of my bed and onto the floor, where I found my sister, asleep under my bed. She was never a sleepwalker, but it wasn't unusual for my siblings to try and negotiate their way into my bed. I was the oldest and typically had Game Boys under my pillow, so sleepovers were common. But I had never had a sibling walk into my room, crawl under my bed and go to sleep. To this day we still ask her WTF was going on, and she can't remember it at all. My best friend's little brother disappeared from an army base last July. Good or bad, I'd like to know what happened to Private Richard Halliday. The Alps murders, as they're known in the UK. An English family on holiday in France are assassinated with an old pistol with accuracy that points towards a professional hit. A cyclist is found murdered in the same lay-by by the same weapon. The assassin thought they had tied up all loose ends until after 8 hours on the scene the French police found their 4-year-old daughter hiding under her dead mother's legs. 9 years later there's still no clue over who or why they were all murdered. GQ did the best article about it. This year, the investigation of the Alp murders, or La Tari de Chevelin as we call it, was reopened after some searches in a different case that sounds like the plot of a Polar. A CEO, Muriel Millet, ordered a hit on a syndicalist. Members of the Freemason lodge called Athanor actually organized the hit. They confessed and are incarcerated, using as hitmen 2 agents from the GS, the French Secret Services. It revealed a few other successful and unsuccessful hits, all having this Athanor lodge as a common denominator. After the searches, they reopened the Alp murders case, so I guess it's safe to speculate that it was most probably an organized hit gone wrong, since a cyclist saw it and subsequently got shot. This is random, but I will never forget arguing with an old business associate after threatening to go public with some info. Some situations call for a little leverage. He looked at me very seriously and reminded me he was a Freemason. I found it hilarious at the time. We did, however, work it all out. Reading this, was the guy trying to tell me I was about to get myself assassinated? Lol. Probably reminding you that he has a special relationship with other people who you yourself may unbeknownst have business relationships with. A former Mason friend of mine described a chain of whispers by which members may discredit people. Had you not worked things out, you may suddenly have found your lead supplier was taking his contract elsewhere, or contractors you wished to hire would inexplicably refuse your business. What are the Mormons keeping in their vault that's surrounded in granite and heavily guarded? What happened to the Beaumont children? Changed the way parents in my hometown thought about letting their kids out on a weekend forever. I can't imagine the feeling they had when the kids didn't show up at 12, then at 2. Then they couldn't find them at the beach. That crescendo of panic is absolutely miserable. So sorry for them. Edit, oh man, if those letters weren't a hoax, I don't know how the parents could live with themselves about 2 years after the disappearance. 37 The Beaumont parents received 2 letters supposedly written by Jane, and another by a man who said he was keeping the children. The envelope showed a postmark of Dandenong, Victoria. The brief notes describe a relatively pleasant letter from the man said that he had appointed himself guardian of the children and was willing to hand them back to their parents. In the letter a meeting place was nominated. Citation needed. The Beaumont parents, followed by a detective, drove to the designated place but nobody appeared. It was some time later that a third letter, also purported to be from Jane, arrived. It said that the man had been willing to return them, but when he realized a disguised detective was also there, he decided that the Beaumonts had betrayed his trust and that he would keep the children. There were no further letters. They were confirmed to be a hoax by a teenager. Damn, that kid earned his place in hell early.